Based on an area of my life that I revealed in marriage counseling, our previous church stated that we were not ready to get married and we needed to seek indefinite outside the church counseling. There were no dress fittings or cake tastings. There were no brunch dates with the girls, going shopping for all things wedding. The wedding planning halted almost immediately, and it Many women fantasize about when they will meet their husband. Little girls do it too. I can remember playing a game when I was a kid called MASH. And by the time you finished the game, you knew who you would marry, where y'all were going to live, and how many kids that you would have. If only it were that easy, right? I had no idea what I didn't know when I didn't know it. My situation wasn't so ideal. Now, I will say it worked out in the end. At the date that this is being filmed, my husband and I have been married for 21 years. Woo, woo, woo. 2 kids, and we are growing closer towards oneness. But our start was a little bumpy. Sis, sometimes life doesn't go the way that we plan, and this was the case after my husband proposed 6 months after we started dating. Now, I thought that we would have a short courtship and head on into marital bliss, but that is not what happened. Based on an area of my life that I revealed in marriage counseling, our previous church stated that we were not ready to get married and we needed to seek indefinite outside the church counseling. There were no dress fittings or cake tastings. There were no brunch dates with the girls, going shopping for all things wedding. The wedding planning halted almost immediately, and it was a difficult time because so many of our family and associates were asking, what's going on with you guys? Are y'all still getting married? Do you have a new date? Yada, yada, yada. I felt humiliated and scared and different because we were the first and maybe I think the only couple to experience this, but it was likely the best thing for me at the time. I needed to focus less on the wedding date and more on my personal growth and development. Y'all, the world tends to focus on shallow metrics to determine whether or not you are compatible with someone or someone is marriage material. Is he good looking? Does he have a great job? Does he have a nice physique? Is he a great dresser? Are we compatible? Do we look good together? Things that you might see on The Bachelor. And whereas these are not bad criteria or qualities, they are not essential to making a marriage work. But in reality, making a marriage work requires intentional effort to improve the stuff that you cannot see on the surface. Things like emotional intelligence, deep inner healing from your wounds and your trauma, communication, maturity, holiness, self-awareness, love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. All of that and then some. It requires that we work on ourselves prior to ever attempting to walk down the aisle and say, I do, becoming one with someone else. Friends, this is what my unexpected marriage detour did for me. Whereas we could have made a beeline for the county courthouse, we opted to submit to the guidance and the leadership of our marriage counselors in our lives at the church we were at that time. Immediately, we stopped planning our wedding and began separate counseling outside the church. It was difficult, it was embarrassing, it was slow. But I believe it was necessary. With the help of a therapist, I worked on my dominant thoughts and my corresponding behaviors and my actions that were governed by those thoughts. I countered lies with the truth of the gospel, and I focused on myself as a woman and not as a wife. Years later, I understood my detour even more. I was listening to a message to singles about what to do while they waited on their mate. And the suggestion was to become the person that the person you are looking for is looking for. It sounds a little bit confusing, but it makes so much sense when you think about it. What was meant by this was that we have a list for our dream person, but what if our dream person would not be interested in us because we have not taken the time necessary to do the same type of preparation to be the person that they are looking for? The focus should not be on the other person becoming their best. It should be on us becoming the best possible version of ourselves. Honestly, this is a lesson that we can take right on into the marriage, because if we think we are going to point out flaws in the other person while we sit back and rest on our laurels and remain unchanged, we are confused. The better that we are as women, the better our relationship will be. This requires growth. When we think about Genesis 2:18, it says this: "Then the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper who is just right for him." God took his time forming Eve. He made sure she was just right, suitable. This meant it was the perfect timing for God to present her to him, and she was the perfect mate. Sometimes it may be the right person at the wrong time, but the right person at the wrong time is still the wrong person, right? The word helper translates to azer, and it means help or assistance. This is who we are to be in marriage, a tailor-made, perfect fit helpmate for our spouse. And like a slow cooker meal, this takes time. It's not a microwave. It takes time prior to marriage, but in all honesty, it takes time within the marriage too. And even once the kinks are worked out, we are still likely to have some bumps in the road. We are human, but the goal is that we would continually work towards becoming God's best as we wait for God's best in our future spouse or in our current spouse in marriage. And we can see the corresponding result of Eve being God's best when Adam responded. He was like, whoa, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. Genesis 2:23. Adam recognized that she was God's best for him. She didn't have to say, hey, I'm your best. He immediately knew it. May this be our focus, whether we are married or single, or may our relationships be better because of it. I hope that this was a blessing for you, and I invite you to join me next week as I talk about what I wish I knew before I got married.